Up in Switzerland, which I have only been once in my life long ago, there are the Alps. They're so beautiful. And in the Alps, the huge mountains of the Alps in Switzerland, waters come down from the tops of the mountains and come into these mid-range valleys. Not all the way down to the valleys, but in these mid-range valleys, they come together, and they call these things watersheds. It's where water comes together from tall mountains, kind of in the middle, and then eventually they go down and end up at sea level, but they're there. In Florida, we don't have it. In Florida, we have water tables and aquifers where water collects, like the Everglades, and even underneath us, there's water directly underneath us here in Florida. But in the mountains, they call them watersheds, or in the United States, we call them continental divides, where water comes together, where there's a specific place in Switzerland where it's a beautiful coming together of this water in a little pond, and in the wintertime, it snows on it, it freezes, and it's a gorgeous place of just a connection. It's a beautiful, one of those beautiful winter scenes. But what happens in the springtime? The water begins to melt. And in this specific watershed up in Switzerland, there's two valleys that it goes down. The valley to the north, the water begins to melt and heads down the valley. It's called the Rhine Valley. It goes down the Rhine Valley into the Rhine River, which is in Germany. Many of you are from Germany. And it goes up to the north into the Baltic Sea and the cold waters up in the Scandinavian areas. The other side of the watershed goes down the Rhone Valley into Lake Geneva, and out of Lake Geneva into the Rhone River, out of the Rhone River, down through France, and ends up in the warm waters of the Mediterranean Sea. The water that was in a pond smaller than the building we are in, half the water ends up in the cold Baltic, and half the water ends up in the warm Mediterranean, hundreds and hundreds of miles apart, in theory, within a couple of months after the spring thaws. And you go, how can that happen? Something so beautiful and together is now hundreds and hundreds of miles apart. And that is really the issue of truth. We can look at truth and we go, boy, isn't it beautiful? Isn't it unified? Don't we all agree? Well, when there's nothing to disagree, there's no heat, we all agree and it's a beautiful thing. But when the heat begins to rise, part of it heads one way and part of it heads another. Your view of truth is very important in understanding the issues in our culture today. And by the end of this morning, stay with me for the whole morning, we're going to look at it to see which way you're heading. And I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to say, are you heading this way or this way? You have to look at it. And so let's begin to look at it.